In the hills of Arkansas, the past is never really gone. It lingers in abandoned places, hides in forests, and lives on in the stories we tell. Today I'm at the highest point in Fayetteville, Mount Sequoyah, where breathtaking views meet over a century of history. Welcome to Whispers in the Holler. For decades, Mount Sequoyah was known as a Methodist retreat center, a place for worship, study, and quiet reflection. Today, it's home to concerts, art galleries, community events, and still moments of peace. We had the opportunity to catch up with Emily Gentry from Mount Sequoyah, who shares how the site evolved over time while holding on to its soul.
Mount Sequoyah's history really is rooted in the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church was looking for some sort of venue to build a retreat and conference center. They had Lake Junaluska in North Carolina. That was a big model for what they were looking to do here, because every Methodist this side of the Mississippi River was expressing it was difficult to travel that far to get to Lake Junaluska. This was all happening in the 1920s, and it was part of that Chautauqua movement. So Chautauqua, New York was also, I think, has some Methodist roots as well, bringing arts, culture, spirituality, and just a place to gather for people. And so that was that movement that really made this possible. And so a committee of Methodists got together and selected a site, and then really got to work building what is now Mount Sequoyah. The city of Fayetteville made the best offer, so they said they gifted land, they gifted some seed money, utility and road hookups, because they believed in this as well. The city of Fayetteville was wanting to be more than just a university town and really add to the university. And a site like Mount Sequoyah was a perfect opportunity for that, because it would be a site that's bringing in people for education, for trainings, for all sorts of things. So yeah, that's the main part of that history is rooted in that Methodist Church, founded in 1922. In fact, I think when they selected Fayetteville, they made the announcement in Fort Smith and then wired it up to Fayetteville to let them know they were selected. And I believe it said by midnight the town was made aware by the ringing of the bells. So I'm sure they were obnoxiously ringing the bells at midnight to let people know that Fayetteville was selected. They said the announcement rivaled the Armistice Day celebration of 1918. So the city was really excited.
And so you say selected, and you mean out of bids nationwide?
It was a fairly regional. I don't know how nationwide it was.
West of the Mississippi?
West of the Mississippi River. I know they were looking Mena, Pettigene, Branson, so like Missouri, I think an area in Kansas. I know those were some of the cities that I've seen that were considered.
Sure.
I think Hot Springs was potentially considered for a site like this, but ultimately Fayetteville won out. And it's really interesting thinking about some of the sites where they're at now, like Branson.
Yeah.
You know, imagining a Mount Sequoyah in a Branson setting, and you're like, oh, that they went a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
In its early years, Mount Sequoyah hosted youth camps, church trainings, and regional conferences, bringing thousands together for learning and community.
Back in the early days, I think they were doing even some like Sunday school curriculum training, so teaching Sunday school teachers how to teach a curriculum, and then also testing how that was received by kids. Is this educational? Are they learning what they want to learn? But a lot of it was that camp focus. So coming for camp activities, coming boys camp and a girls camp. I read, I think in the 30s, they charged for a week's worth of camp with food and books was $11. And I was like, that is amazing.
If only.
I know,
right?
if only.
Coming up,
Taylor Swift has performed at Mount Sequoyah.
What?
Yes, circa 2006-ish, I think. I think it was one of the first concerts that we did in the Music on the Mountain kind of series. But a local radio station, I think, helped bring her up. Experience Fayetteville was involved in that. In fact, Julie Pennington has wonderful stories of driving Taylor around to Jose's on Dixon to get a dinner and then come back up here.
And later,
Sequoyah Hall, it was probably one of the most evidence we have ever caught. I spoke with Rachel after we did our investigation, and I was like, hey, you might have one of the most haunted places in the state of Arkansas.
Okay, so obviously over time, Mount Sequoyah has evolved, and there have been some things that have maybe helped it along its transition, right? So maybe talk about those turning points in the transformation from what it was to what we have here now.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to people and people really understanding the vision. One of the very first directors of Mount Sequoyah was named Reverend Sam Yancey. And he really worked to promote Mount Sequoyah in that Methodist church. He was going out, talking to each of these churches and conferences and saying, you have to come see this place. You have to come visit. You're a Methodist. You're already helping support this place. Please come. And so that, I think, was one of the big reasons that Mount Sequoyah grew. The first couple of directors just weren't they were focused on building and growing and getting the place started. But Sam Yancey was, I think, here for 30 years. And was just relentless, traveled extensively throughout the jurisdiction, really telling people to come and be here. And I think the Methodist Church also was able to develop a lot of partnerships. And so like the building we're sitting in today was built by an outside entity. It wasn't built by Mount Sequoyah Center, it was built by the Women's Missionary Society. So they worked it out so that the Women's Missionary Society could fundraise, build, construct, and then also program a building of this size and scope, which is a huge accomplishment. Some of the things didn't work out as well. Like I know back in the 30s, they were talking about building a fireproof hotel called Sequoyah Terrace. And so they tried to do shareholders, they tried to really like invest in that, and it ultimately didn't work out. But it wasn't something that stopped them from continuing on. But yeah, the Women's Missionary Society ran and operated the building we're in right now, which we call Sequoyah Hall. It was called the Elza Stevens Rummel Building prior to that name change. But yeah, they ran it up through the 50s and 60s, sometime in there. And then they weren't doing the same programming they were doing, so they gifted it back to Mount Sequoyah and said, hey, you take this dorm. It has 30 rooms. Back in the day, it had a kitchen facility. Right now, we've taken the kitchen facility out, and it's not been here since I've been here. It has a beautiful 4th floor that we'd love to restore, and it's been used for a number of things. So it's just this building's evolution has been cool. Like it was used as a dorm. Most people that have nostalgic memories of coming to Methodist-related events at Mount Sequoyah have stayed in this building. Sometimes they don't know it until they walk in and they're like, oh yeah.
Oh, I was here as a kid.
I've been here as a kid.
Yeah.
And I love getting to facilitate tours where people have that kind of remembrance moment. We even housed Hurricane Katrina victims in this building. After that disaster, we had people here and they stayed, I think, for almost a year.
Wow.
And so again, like Mount Sequoyah is just constantly like evolving and looking for ways that we can serve our community, ways that we can fill a need, and just activate the space.
By 2016, church use had declined, and the Methodist Conference divested the property. Instead of selling to developers, the land was gifted to a new nonprofit board, ensuring Mount Sequoyah would remain a community space open to all.
We took that focus from serving this wide 8-state region of Methodists and really trying to say that's all we're serving. We're really trying to focus on these folks, to saying, hey, let's invite our community. Fayetteville for a long time felt that they weren't allowed on the property if they weren't Methodist. There were no trespassing signs. I talked to a lot of people that said, like, anytime I was up there, I felt like I was in the wrong place and it wasn't supposed to be there. And so we've been trying to break down some of those barriers to get people that have grown up their whole lives here and maybe known about Mount Sequoyah, but not been necessarily invited, to come up and check it out. We're still a destination. We still want people traveling in from out of town to come be with us, to come do events with us. I think that's been that largest difference is the locals and saying, hey, we're here for you.
Yeah.
We're part of your town. We've grown with you since the 1920s, and we want you to come use the
Right.
space.
So instead of like an 8-state regional focus, even though they're still invited, obviously, you've turned it into like, hey, you live 8 seconds away, 8 minutes away, come up to the top of Mount Sequoyah and see what we have going on.
Yeah, make this part of your daily walk.
Yeah.
Make this part of your exercise routine. Get in the pool.
I mean, just coming up or just driving up here, I saw people running and walking on the streets who were obviously exercising to me, right? So it's like part of the community. And speaking of sort of that shift, and you said this earlier, the Methodist Church was all about cultural exploration, faith exploration, getting outside, doing camps, and you have sort of kept that going, maybe kind of with a different overall shell or an overall focus. So talk to me about how you kind of kept that heritage alive with what you're doing here at Mount Sequoyah now.
Yeah, I think that Chautauqua movement is really a great kind of framework and model for things. You're doing a lot of different things, but it's all about personal growth, improvement, and just being in nature. There's countless studies that talk about the importance of nature on the human psyche and mental health, and it increases creativity. It increases just general well-being, and so being able to set that in a natural setting, I think has been something that's stayed important to us, and we've just kind of tried to diversify how we do it.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on just religion and being emphasized there, we're trying to say, yes, we want people to have spiritual encounters up here, but also education, culture, art, help us think outside the box, trying to say, how can we best use this space for the future?
Yeah, and speaking of art, just because we're surrounded in this room by some beautiful artwork right now, and I know that Phoenix also has a gallery space up here, and I've known several artists who have either lived on site or done artist retreats up here, so it's kind of become a hub for art, both visual art, also performing art. Talk to us about how maybe that connects you to the larger community here.
Yeah, I think people they want to be inspired. They want to see beautiful things. They want to see people creating. They want to see the product of that work. And it's inspiring to say, look at what's been created. What can I do, even if I'm not an artist? I think that's just an important kind of thing. And it also creates that sense of belonging, of knowing that a lot of the folks that are up here are locals. And so just being establishing that sense of pride in Fayetteville, of this is a local artist that has created this work, and I can see their work all over town. Jason Jones has a studio here. He has a mural on site. He has murals all over town. And so just being able to see that the artists that are here, the creatives that are here, and then also providing opportunities for intro level, hey, try it out. Take a class, take a workshop. When we offer classes and workshops, we're also paying the artists to teach them. So it's a great boost to the economy and personal finances for people, but it's also a way to try it out. And I think that's been one of the biggest shifts since not being Methodist, is just formalizing the Creative Spaces program and all of the things that entails.
Yeah.
The music, the ceramics, the artwork on the walls, and just there's so many opportunities.
Sure.
Looking ahead, Mount Sequoiah's leaders hope to restore historic buildings like Sequoyah Hall and expand campus programming, so the mountaintop continues to serve as a place of connection, creativity, and renewal.
I know Music on the Mountain has been a really neat program that's been here longer than I've been here. In fact, Taylor Swift has performed at Mount Sequoyah.
What?
Yes, circa 2006-ish, I think. I think it was one of the first concerts that we did in the Music on the Mountain kind of series. But a local radio station, I think, helped bring her up. Experience Fayetteville was involved in that. And in fact, Julie Pennington has wonderful stories of driving Taylor around to Jose's on Dixon to get a dinner and then come back up here. And so, yeah, just seeing that history of local musicians, but also people coming in from out of town to perform and play. I think Music on the Mountain has been a special place in a lot of people's hearts. And then one of the other partners we've had that's been since the pandemic has been the gym. Clubhouse Fitness rents space from us. We have a group that's Parisi Swimming is running our Marlin Swim program, and they're activating the pool and teaching kids how to swim better, how to be safe, how to be fit, and just so many wonderful qualities that they're getting to do.
And all the things that you just said remind me, in a way, they have an echo of like summer camp. You said the Methodist Church used to do a lot of camps up here for young people, and it's like that tradition continues.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned being outside, and you mentioned the benefits of nature. Can we talk about the overlook? I feel like that is a huge accomplishment, and it gives an anchor spot for people who, as you said before, might not have felt welcomed up here on the mountain before.
Yes, I think the overlook is one of those best things we're known for. People are like, oh yeah, the cross with the view. And even back in long history, people have parked, they've been engaged, they've taken a view, they've had meaningful conversations all at that point, and we've gotten a chance, thanks to some grant funding, to develop that a little bit more. So we've added an observation deck, we've taken away the parking and made it more pedestrian friendly, we've added plants, we've added benches are coming, some artist created benches that are also planters are coming, more rocks for sitting on, and just trying to de-emphasize the cars and emphasize the people, because that's really what people want. They want a space to sit and enjoy and engage, and then with the grant, the whole goal of that was to help people tie that overlook area to the rest of the property. Because a lot of people would come up and be like, I've grown up coming to the cross, but I never knew what there was across the street. And so that's the narrative we've been trying to write with the outdoor artwork on our campus. It's like, you know, come to the cross, but stay a while. And I will tease that one of the things that we're getting ready to open to try to help continue to emphasize that is we're opening a coffee shop with an outside partner. I can't announce who that's going to be yet because we're still finalizing all the things, but we're really excited. It's someone who's local to Fayetteville, has been here a long time, and is just going to really, I think, take that and just give people a reason to come up, get a coffee, get a drink, have some snacks, and then walk around and stay a while.
Coming up.
Sequoyah is a Cherokee man that was born around the year 1770. And in his lifetime, he dedicated his work to bringing together the Cherokee Nation, not only like physically trying to reform the factions after displacement from, you know, the Trail of Tears, and even before the Trail of Tears really, you know, began, things were fractioning out.
And later.
The importance of the mountaintop in Christian theology and tradition, it also has a symbolic importance in addition to the beauty of any retreat center, Christian or otherwise. And I'll point to you to MLK's last speech before he died. He mentioned that I have been to the mountaintop.
Sequoyah was more than just a name. He was a visionary, a Cherokee scholar who gave his people the gift of written language. Watch as we learn who Sequoyah was, why his legacy is celebrated, and what it means to carry his name on this mountaintop.
Sequoyah is a Cherokee man that was born around the year 1770. And in his lifetime, he dedicated his work to bringing together the Cherokee Nation, not only like physically trying to reform the factions after displacement from, you know, the Trail of Tears, and even before the Trail of Tears really, you know, began, things were fractioning out. But he formed a Cherokee writing system. So he developed the Cherokee syllabary, which is a notational system that forms Cherokee sounds in the language into written form. So the writing system consists of about 86 characters. And so through that, they began to bring the Cherokee Nation back together, and they can communicate in new ways that they hadn't before. So it was very instrumental in keeping these people together and alive and thriving. And even today, the Cherokee Nation is the largest Native nation in the United States.
Sequoyah's writing system spread quickly. By 1825, the Cherokee Phoenix newspaper was being published, a publication that still exists today in both English and Cherokee.
At the time, of course, it was instrumental in keeping the nation together. He made it his life's goal to connect all of these different factions, both physically and through writing. He did that until the day he died. And this legacy has lived on until today, really. I mean, we have OCO TV, which publishes a number of different amazing TV shows about the Cherokee people. We have the Cherokee Phoenix that publishes in both English and Cherokee to keep the news current within the Cherokee Nation. But also with the act of 1991, in the Cherokee Nation actually did kind of like a cultural preservation act and in that they focused on language and the syllabary and Sequoyah's work. So through that, today there are over 2,000 first language Cherokee speakers in the Cherokee Nation today, and even thousands more of like proficient or beginner Cherokee, and it's because of all of the different language programs that the Cherokee Nation offers. So it is instrumental in keeping the culture together, preserved, and still thriving today.
Why would the Methodist Church in the 1920s name their retreat Mount Sequoyah?
Mrs. Elizabeth Hardwood Miller, which her and her husband were pillars of the Methodist community at the time, and they were given the honor of renaming this mountain. And even before then, in the year 1885, there was a book published that connected Sequoyah's name to the Greek Cadmus and the biblical Moses. And so that ideology was already ingrained into a number of people through this book. And so 37 years later, Mrs. Miller probably had this idea in mind and connected Sequoyah's name to Moses. And so having those two stories connected together, and you've got the mountain, and you have the idea of him bringing the Cherokee people together. And I actually have a quote from Mrs. Miller on the naming of the mountain. So Mrs. Miller says, Sequoyah led his people from their eastern home and established friendly relations with the Cherokee here in Arkansas. So that's her framing mindset. And so that is why it is called Mount Sequoyah today, is because of those interesting connections there. And the stories align a little bit, but Moses is definitely important in his own right.
When people hear the name Mount Sequoyah, what do you hope they will remember about him?
So when visitors hear the name Mount Sequoyah, I first hope that they, remember his history and his legacy, or look it up if anything, and then pull this from it. I hope they see that this man dedicated his life to caring for people, bringing people together through many different obstacles. One could say a mountain itself. But he was, disabled and chastised for work, but, after a brief amount of time of showing how important communication was, it brought, the entire Cherokee Nation together. And so with all of that and his perseverance, he overcame, everything that was stacked against him and dedicated his entire life to, his mission. So I hope that they remember that and they pull inspiration from it as well, and hope that they live their life a little bit like Sequoyah and giving a gift back to the world in some way.
Visitors today can still see Sequoyah's preserved cabin in Sallisaw, Oklahoma, where he lived in his final years.
Mount Sequoyah's story is part of something bigger, a narrative about faith movements, urban growth, and the cultural blending that shaped Northwest Arkansas. Historian Rafi Andonian gives us that deeper context, from the naming of the mountain to its role in the community. It wouldn't be Whispers in the Holler if we didn't sit down with Rafi Andonian, talking to us about some historical context. And in this episode, we're focused specifically on Mount Sequoyah. So I kind of want to dive in to that topic. And I'm wondering when and why Mount Sequoyah was founded in Fayetteville, and if you know its original purpose.
Yeah, the original purpose is, it's founded by the Methodist Church, so its original purpose is as a religious retreat. And why here in Fayetteville? A couple reasons. One is that the Methodist Church was looking for a retreat space west of the Mississippi. And so the closest one, believe it or not, other than here at the time, in the 1940s we're talking about, was in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Pretty far. So why Fayetteville within the west of the Mississippi? Because Fayetteville, the city of Fayetteville, actually gave money and land to the church to come and do that here and offer utilities and roads to the mountaintop to be able to establish that retreat. So there was kind of an incentive because Fayetteville vied for it and wanted it here.
Yeah, well, you kind of leading into answering my next question, and that is, why do you think they chose the spot up there on top of the mountain with this beautiful scenic view of the entire city and the surrounding area? Why was that spot chosen?
Well, you just said it. It's beautiful. If I'm going to go to a retreat, I want it to be beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But I would also add that in my interpretation, I would say that when you're talking about the importance of the mountaintop in the New Testament, think about the Noah's flood, and the Noah's Ark leads him to the mountaintop, Mount Ararat, right?
Right.
And the importance of the mountaintop in Christian theology and tradition, it also has a symbolic importance in addition to the beauty of any retreat center, Christian or otherwise. And I'll point to you to MLK's last speech before he died. He mentioned that I have been to the mountaintop.
Right.
And I have seen the promised land. So that's the value and the importance. The mountaintop allows you to see the promised land in the Christian tradition. And don't forget, MLK is coming of age in the same era. We're talking about very similar theology. He's born in late 1920s, comes of age in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So we're talking about the same era as this, very much an important part of Protestant tradition.
Let's talk about the name, Mount Sequoyah. It honors the Cherokee scholar who created written language. And how do you think that that choice reflected the cultural or historical climate of that time?
So when Mount Sequoyah was being established as a retreat center, there was a contest that was held for the name.
Okay.
And the one that won, the entry that won, was Mount Sequoyah, was attaching it to Sequoyah, the Cherokee scholar that you described. Now, I think it's fitting. There's no direct connection between the Methodist Church and Sequoyah explicitly. Sequoyah predates this project as well. Sequoyah himself was a late 18th, early 19th century figure. However, there is some stories that do connect specifically here to Northwest Arkansas in a couple of ways. So Sequoyah is one of the folks that helped lead the Cherokee from the southeast, in Georgia particularly, across on the Trail of Tears, to help their way towards the Indian Territory, which is Oklahoma today. And of course, we're not terribly far from Oklahoma.
Sure.
And so he did come through this region, as did the entire Trail of Tears, right? Trail of Tears has a few different strands, but came through here as well. And after that, Sequoyah himself actually moved to Arkansas and moved to Northwest Arkansas, believe it or not.
Wow.
So he lived here for a while. We don't know exactly why, and that's what records get a little bit sparse, especially in the early 19th century, but we know that he was here. So I think that the geographic location, as well as the fact that he represents the intersection of the Anglo and indigenous cultures, because he had an Anglo father and a Cherokee mother, and of course he translated the language from oral to written, and many things came out of that, including the first Cherokee language New Testament that happened because of what he did. In fact, the Cherokee Council commissioned a medal to give to him for his work in doing so.
Wow.
And so I think you can tie his story to the Christian story as well, and is particularly locally because of his local presence. And so I would guess that the entry was trying to draw those connections symbolically, but they do have some historical kind of themes to them as well.
You know, as you travel the country, I'm just curious, Mount Sequoyah, it's an inspiration, it sits on a hill. How common is that? And do you see places on the historic register that also exist in other cities that are similar to Mount Sequoyah?
Yeah, absolutely, you do. Now, what's on the historic register at Mount Sequoyah is particular buildings, right?
Sure.
And you could potentially make the argument for, all the property. It could be something that anyone can nominate, so it is something that people can do. But yes, generally I feel, I've been to some retreat centers. I've actually led some programs at some retreat centers, various like history retreats and different things. And they are often, like, for example, one that comes to mind is Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, which used to be an old sort of wealthy dude ranch for a lot of stars to go and get away, kind of away from the major centers in New Mexico.
Right.
Of course, Georgia O'Keeffe, the famous artist of the 20th century, ended up kind of partially living there because she was so inspired by the place. And so I think that similar inspiration of the outdoors, it sits kind of on a high ground. You have these beautiful vistas when you look from where you are. It's not a mountaintop, but it kind of has an elevation that you see toward mountains, and then you look kind of down toward a river valley. And I think that that principle carries over. Notice it was also a retreat center. It got reiterated today. It's kind of like an artist retreat center.
Yeah.
So I've been to those places, and yes, absolutely, you see that theme reoccurring. Of course, you think about, speaking of North Carolina, we mentioned that, you know, the Methodist Church used to have its closest retreat center in North Carolina before they had one in Arkansas. Well, you go to western North Carolina in the mountains, you're going to find retreat centers. You did back then, and you do today. So that theme and iteration is not true, I think, just in the context of the church and Christianity, but in the population at large. Although you can argue that, you know, even though the world is more secular today, we do draw our cultural traditions much from, you know, kind of a Western European Judeo-Christian tradition, and we kind of establish those values.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there are any stories, maybe. I mean, I know we've talked about Sequoyah and Trail of Tears, but are there any stories that come out of Mount Sequoyah that you could enlighten us with?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest stories about Mount Sequoyah is the fact that you had this push early on to create the retreat center as an attraction that I think is really fascinating, because the city clearly, like, think of it today, we think about, you know, cities bidding for companies. We think about cities bidding for sports teams, for example, if a sports team is going to move around. Why? Because they want that attraction, that economic development that comes with it, the people that it brings in from
Bidding
outside.
the Olympics.
That's right, the Olympics.
Town, right?
Yes,
Something
of course.
like that.
Big business conference,
Sure.
right? Conventions. Because what happens a lot of times is someone comes here, has a good time on that convention, the sporting event, or whatever the case is. They discover the place, they come back a few more times, and occasionally end up moving here.
Right.
And that's how you have that economic development. So to me, one of the really fascinating stories in that Mount Sequoyah story, in addition to Sequoyah himself and the connection that we're talking about, and in addition to the early, you know, reverence efforts to sell the properties to be able to develop and raise cash, and in addition to the legacy of it continuing as a retreat center. But another piece to that throughout is the bid by Fayetteville to put in the bid, if you will, offer utilities, money, and land to make sure that it comes here and get that development. And I'd say it worked pretty well. Here we are 80 years later, and it's still functioning in some fashion to its original mission.
Coming up.
And so when we got to the third floor, things changed. We were getting REM pod activity, and I was getting my shirt tugged on, and I got hit in the leg. After that, we went to the attic, and that's where we were getting probably some of the best evidence any paranormal investigation team could get.
Sequoyah Hall, built in 1927, originally stood as Elza Stevens Rimmel Hall, a women's dormitory and classroom building funded by the Women's Missionary Society. Named for three influential women of the era, the four-story structure once featured open balconies and a roof garden, and later had its top floor enclosed to protect it from the elements. Today, known as Sequoyah Hall, it still retains many historic features: wood floors, exposed beams, clawfoot tubs, even original windows. It's in spaces like this where history lingers. And for AJ and his team, it's also the setting for moments that feel less like the past and more like something is still very present.
So first of all, just tell us about Big Boys Paranormal and what you do generally.
So Big Boys Paranormal started 2 years ago. A good friend of mine, Matt Morse, me and him got together and wanted to start a paranormal investigation team. And so we did research, got on Google, and looked at places to investigate in a local area. And we found a few places, and we found Mount Sequoyah, so here we are.
On their first night in Sequoyah Hall, they didn't expect much, but things escalated quickly.
Sequoyah Hall, it was probably one of the most evidence we have ever caught. I spoke with Rachel after we did our investigation, and I was like, hey, you might have one of the most haunted places in the state of Arkansas. When we first started here, We were on the second floor and we weren't getting anything. But, I mean, we didn't have expectations here because we had no idea what we were gonna get. And so when we got to the third floor, things changed. We were getting REM pod activity, and I was getting my shirt tugged on, and I got hit in the leg.
Can you knock on one of these doors? Okay.
That works too.
Thank you.
Something hit you right in the leg.
What?
You heard that.
I did.
You heard that.
I did.
So you physically felt something?
Oh, physically, yes.
Were they trying to warn you, pull you back? Do you have any idea what those tugs and touches were for?
I think they were just trying to spook us. To say, hey, yeah, we're here.
In the attic, they set up a REM pod by a lone chair. Each time they stepped closer, the device lit up.
I don't know if it likes you sitting in that chair.
No, hang on. Stay there. Go back. Hurry. Watch your head.
Dude, it does not like him in that chair.
It does not.
That is his chair.
Oh, I wasn't even pointing at him.
So we backed off a little bit and we weren't getting any activity. And then every time we would step a foot closer to it, it would just go off. And so we tried to debunk it. We tried to see if, are we causing it? Well, we weren't. There was no way we were doing it. And so I talked to Dylan Brewer, that's on our team. I said, hey, let's run an Estes method, which is you put headphones on and we'll blindfold you and we'll run a spirit box, which a spirit box runs AM frequencies at a fast rate. So if any spirit's there that wants to communicate can use the waves to they can talk, they can speak. And so we're running that and we get a male's voice coming through saying, what's going on in here?
Yeah, you're not setting it off.
No. I'm not going to your chair.
I heard what's going on in here.
We're just here to talk.
I'm really cold right here. I got goosebumps like
Oh my gosh, I did too.
I don't understand.
What's your name? So right now Dylan's doing the Estes method.
I honestly can't understand. It kind of sounds like
But it sounds
Agnes. I don't know.
like to us that's his. Is it a male? Are you a
It's a
male?
male. Yeah.
It sounds like to me that that's his spot. Because every time we get close to that spot, that REM pod goes off like, hey, like, respect the boundaries.
You try it now.
You know, we're literally talking to somebody on the other side. And so Josh was with me as well, and I said, hey, step forward and we'll see what happens. So he walks forward and the REM pod goes off again. So to me, that's, hey, this is my area, stay away.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, let's just, keep going and see, maybe he'll be okay with us being close. And as the Estes method's still going, Amel's voice says, my name, AJ, do not.
Is it okay?
I trust you.
It was a male singing AJ.
Whoa.
Do not.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was probably some of the coolest evidence we've ever caught here.
They've captured other moments too, like unexplained laughter caught on camera and small bursts of activity in Parker Hall. But the attic remains their most compelling evidence.
Why do you love ghost hunting?
That's actually a really good question. It's a thrill. It's a spooky thrill. Everyone likes to watch their scary movies at home. I like to go film a scary movie, pretty much. But yeah, it's a lot of us on the team were skeptics. We didn't believe it until we got our first evidence, and we couldn't figure out why we were getting that evidence. and then hearing especially your name coming through a spirit box, like it's crazy.
That is wild.
Their investigation at Mount Sequoyah began with a simple invitation and quickly turned into one of the most memorable nights they've ever recorded.
What does this place look like in 5 years, 10 years? What's your vision?
That is a great question. I was actually talking about that with our board chair recently. I think the building that we're sitting in, I think in 5, we're hoping, our goal is 5, maybe 10 years, but to have a full renovation and restoration of this space, including the 4th floor. The 4th floor used to be all windows, and the windows have been boarded up. It's no longer that rooftop look, but we want to bring that back and just have this crown jewel on our campus of this historic building that's been here since the 20s, and that has this upstairs that you can take in the breathtaking views all around you. Ultimately, the next 5 to 10 years, I see a full restoration of our campus where we're catching up on outdated roofs and air conditionings, but also beautifying the space, really listening and understanding what people are wanting when they're up here, and getting that happening. It's likely going to happen with a capital campaign, so we'll have to do a lot of work to make that happen, and so it can be that true Mount Sequoyah experience where people are getting not just one thing, but multiple things while they're up here.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave with this. If you were to describe Mount Sequoyah using some adjectives, just one word, give me a few words and then tell me why you chose those words to describe this place.
That's so hard. That's so hard. I would say peaceful. I would say fun. And I would say, there's so many words.
I know.
And I would say beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I picked peaceful because you get to walk up here and you get to feel that sense of like, hey, this is more than just a park. Like, people have been here for a long time, and lots has happened up here. It kind of is that like sacred space. It's the cross, it's here, it's getting to walk around and feel the deer. Just, they're out, they're grazing, they're out about.
On the way up.
Yes.
Yep.
I say fun because we have a lot of fun up here. There's a lot of fun programs. There's a lot of things that it's an honor to get to be a part of. Sometimes people are celebrating a once in a lifetime thing, and just getting to be a small part of that. When I first started at Mount Sequoyah, I was running our camps program. So that was my big thing, is I wanted to make it fun. Like, if you're coming here, it should be fun. And so I think that's one of the reasons I picked that word. And then beautiful is just the beautiful, not just in how everything looks and feels, but what's happening up here too. Is that sense of community, that sense of connection, that thing that everyone's kind of like, they want to be a part of something more. And I think they can get that here at whatever level you're wanting. Like, it doesn't have to be, you're not having to know all the people up here and be best friends, but like, it can fill that gap. And so I think that's why I said beautiful. Yeah.
Standing at the overlook, you can see the whole city stretched below, a view that has welcomed generations of visitors. And while the skyline changes, the mountain remains, holding its stories and inviting new ones.